last 20 years, and hearing about the issues of concussions and the neurological problems that many football players are dealing with, I felt a need to write or speak up and talk about the issues from my standpoint, because I'm one of those guys who not only was I receiving the concussions, but I was giving the concussions. And I was pretty good at giving concussions, you know, as a part of the game. But I didn't realize the residual effects of what would happen long after the game. And that's one of the things that prompted me to write the book. The other thing is the players who I played with, they hold me in very high regard, if I may say so myself. And some of the guys, they call me their captain for obvious reasons. It's one of these deals that, you know, I'm still involved in a lot of things with players from that team, and not just from the '86 team, but from all of the teams that I've played with, and the guys who I've played with. They've always sort of leaned on me, I've leaned on them, but I consider them my guys, and I consider myself to be their captain long after football. And Phil McConkey and Jim Burke kind of dubbed me their captain for life, hence the title for the book. And you know, that's the way I feel. I'm sort of a social worker and more of an intellectual who just happened to play football. And I notice all of the things that happen. I'm not the typical football player. I've always tried to tell people I had no business playing football. But I was groomed to be an educator. And of all of the things that I've learned from football, I've tried to share those experiences with people who have not played the game. And I think the issues of concussions is one of those things that have sort of allowed me to be a teacher, to share my story, not just with other players, but mothers of players who have played, coaches who coach football, the daughters of men who have played, and now they're having some neurological issues, and you know, the family really doesn't know exactly what's going on. And so, you know, this book is, you know, people ask, well, why did you write the book, or who did you write the book for? I wrote the book for about 20 different groups. My family, because I wanted them to know what I was dealing with in a very succinct way, as opposed to me trying to tell them, because when you sustain a brain injury, and every concussion that I sustained is another brain injury, you're not always in a position to articulate what you're feeling or what you're experiencing. So sometimes you have to write it down. And so I wanted it for my kids to understand, my grandkids to understand, for my family, for the coaches who have coached me to understand, my friends to understand. I wanted my wife to be able to understand some of the issues that I've dealt with, and on and on and on. And as I said, it's just something that came from my heart. I started writing in about 2004. When the Hall of Fame came about in 2006, I had to stop because everything was all about the Hall of Fame, and my life was really like a whirlwind. And I got back into it around the end of 2008, and I finished it the latter part of 2009. And I'm very proud of the fact that I wrote it myself. I didn't have like a ghostwriter or anything like that, but I wrote it myself. And I edited it, and I added more stuff. I took some stuff out. And, you know, what you read is me. And it came from good stuff and some not so good stuff, because while I do talk about the whole concussion issue with me, I also talk about a couple of things that I couldn't really talk about, with the media, the whole Hall of Fame situation. I think you're going to find that interesting. My last year in the National Football League that I've never really shared with anyone, and that last year sort of affected me in a way that still resonates today. So if you want to know what it is, go to my last year and scan, and you'll read it, and you'll get a good understanding as to why I'm sort of hot and cold sometimes with football, and especially with the Giants. But they're still my team. I feel a love for the organization. They've been good to me. I think I've been good to them. Some of the things that I say toward the end of the book might really surprise you, because even as a Pro Football Hall of Famer, and I'm just going to give it away just a little bit, knowing what I know now, if someone had said, would you do it again? I would not. From a physical standpoint, I understood what the risks were, and I analyzed the risk, and I knew that you could get hurt playing football. From a neurological standpoint, if I knew what the risks were and the price that you have to pay, I would not have played football. So that's sort of giving away a lot of the book, but I think you will find it to be a very interesting read. And I think you'll come away from it probably looking at football a little differently, because when you see those guys get out there and they're banging heads and all of that stuff, there's a residual effect of those concussions. And it may not manifest itself early on or initially, but it's one of those things that may have an impact years down the road. So that's a big reason why I wanted to write the book.
So Harry, yes, first of all, I would like to call myself a great fan of Harry's. We met yes, absolutely. I'll start again. I would like to call myself a good friend of Harry right now. My name is Ryan. I wanted to start off with myself. I play football myself, and I've been in many situations where I would tackle it and come at somebody head on, like I would point at them, approach them, and hit me with my head, and my head would get shaken up, and I stepped out of the game. But I was wondering right now, if you had a chance, instead of completely quitting on the game back before you played it, do you think you'd make any moves to try to change up the helmet structure of it, and maybe try to give people a chance to play with more protection?
Well, I'm not condemning football. Basically, it is what it is. Yeah. And I've done a lot of analysis. I'm looking at myself. I'm the guinea pig, okay? And it's not the helmet. It's not the helmet. It is the physicality of the game. It is the pure physics of the game. That when your brain is enclosed in your skull, and there is fluid in your brain, spinal fluid in your brain that goes all the way down your spinal cord to protect the brain. When you're, and I call it Newton's third law of physics, when you stop all of a sudden, whether it's by hit or you stop very abruptly, and you see you're running 9.8, 100. When you stop, and you stop just like that, the brain keeps going, and the brain hits against the inside of the skull. So as a result, you might get a little bruising on the brain, but the brain controls everything. And you know this, Ryan. The brain controls everything.
Talk a lot about it.
Right. And so you don't know how that bruise is going to affect you. So if you get hit